Hey, it's Sue Greenwald again with awakenedstories.com. I'm here today again with Daniel James. Hey, Daniel.
Hi, Sue. Thank you for having me again. And what is this, number 4?
Number 4, the stories continue. So what I was telling Daniel before we started is that our talk the other day stimulated lots of stories. I actually wanted to tell them at that point, but I just felt like it would make the video too long. So we agreed to meet again today and have a more, so that the videos are more palatable. So you were talking about, this your vision where you were on that other planet, and you met the other being and the robot. And I asked you a couple questions. And the first I said, does the robot have antenna? And you said no. So when I went to Egypt in 2018 with Dr. Sam, who's the discoverer of the Bosnian pyramids. And of course, we did a whirlwind tour. It was fabulous. But throughout every temple and every site, there are carvings of every type of being you've ever seen. And one that I was really fascinated with was they'd had humans with their heads cut off, all right, lines of them. And their arms were like kind of tied behind their back at a really weird angle. And I thought that was really weird. But the reason I'm bringing the story up now, and of course I have pictures from that trip. So this is a very primitive drawing. Is we went to the Valley of the Kings and we went into one of the tombs there. And you're not supposed to bring your cell phone or camera anymore. You can sometimes buy a pass, but if they catch you, basically you get kicked out. And they do have, guards all over with guns. So in this particular case, I didn't have my camera with me. A lot of times I would kind of sneak it in. Well, in this case, there's so much to look at because every wall, every surface has got designs and carvings and everything on it. So my friend Phil basically said, hey, come over here. And he pointed up. And my drawing is really primitive. And I gotta say, I don't remember every detail, but this is kind of what it looked like. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. So literally there was a bunch of these guys on the ceiling in one of the tombs. All right, so what I remember is it had no neck and it had like a conical type of a head with antenna. Now, we really don't have a lot of creatures on Earth with antenna like that. So excuse the primitive of drawing, but it just was interesting when you mentioned that robot from your other vision.
And so you're certain this was like animatronic, it was
No,
an android.
it could be a being, like a biological being. I don't know. But that's why I asked you about the antenna, because I was like, well, that's interesting, So
very cool.
The other story that story stimulated for me is I grew up in New York State. My parents had a summer place on the St. Lawrence River, which is between New York and Canada. And we would have campfires at night, and it was amazing. We saw lots of UFOs, all sorts of activity up there. But one time we were all sitting around the fire, and my back was kind of toward the river, which I sensed the presence of something coming. And it was a starry night, and there was basically a giant ship. Came in low, and it came in quiet, and it hovered over us, and it kept going, but it blotted out all the stars. It was so big, literally the whole sky was dark. So I was thinking of that because you had talked about this ship coming in. This was huge. It was coming in from Canada, and it blotted out the stars, and we all got quiet. We looked around for a while, and it kept going on its way. And then the stars came back as it left, but you could feel the presence, how big it was. My mother was sitting next to me, and I, like everybody was quiet. And I said, did you see that? She goes, yep. That's all we ever said. No one ever discussed it. I mean, for 20 years, all we did was talk about UFOs, aliens, alien invasions, like, science fiction stuff. And here we had a very visible giant craft go over our head, and nobody said a word. Isn't that crazy?
It's pretty wild that and I love that you shared it with somebody else.
Yeah.
So that you have that validation, and you you know, did you see that? Yeah, I saw it. And
Yeah.
you know that it's real for you.
Yeah. Because my mother never really liked these conversations. She was always quiet, but she just said, yep. And that's all she said.
Might be all you ever get, but it's
Yeah.
better than nothing because
Yeah.
you know some things can't be denied.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I know you said you had a interesting story. Maybe this is a good time for it
I
because I'll
do,
have
and
more
it's
afterwards, of course.
yeah. Well, mine's right in alignment with yours as well.
Okay.
And I love that you opened your stories with this because it leads right into mine. Now, in order to build the anticipation, I'm just going to take a quick little break. I have to let my little kitten out of my
All right.
office.
Here
She
we
got
go.
stuck, the door closed on her, and I will be right back.
So tell us about your story, Daniel.
Yes, Sue. So the year was 2013. I used to work in a call center, working in collections. So basically like an actual nightmare, nightmarish type of job where, you know, you're working in a call center on the phone trying to collect debts. And I hated my job and I hated my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But so I had we have this inter-system phone system. So you can call other people in the call center, you can call your friends and chat with them for a minute or two. And um, everybody, you know, oftentimes took their little breaks together. At this particular location, we had two buildings, two call centers on the same property. And in between them, in the backyard, was a large pond that you could walk around. So people would oftentimes just go outside and walk around this big pond for their breaks. And I would say that the walk probably takes like just under 10 minutes. So if you're really quick, you know, you can push it, you can walk around twice before your break's over. And so I had a friend, her name was Haley, and her and I would joke around and chat often. Now, Haley is really sweet, and her and her husband are friends of mine, but I wouldn't say that Haley was very spiritually conscious. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know,
Yes.
she
Yeah.
might not believe in too much of, you know,
Right.
paranormal or the esoteric. Some things I think that she's open to considering, and other things I just, you know, she might not be as
Right.
knowledgeable as people in like the, you know, disclosure metaphysics community are. So I say that because it's important. So Haley and I were friends, and we went on breaks together, and we chatted on the phone system often. And um, it was fall. It was fall of 2013.
Okay.
So it was getting dark earlier in the day. So I would say that it was about 6:45 p.m. This time of year, it was already pitch black dark out where we lived.
Yeah, that's the worst, isn't it?
I don't care. I don't mind too much. I like the fall. I don't mind. It definitely offsets your clock a little bit, you know, your
Yeah.
internal clock. But
Yeah.
so we decided to go on break together. We go out and we're making the walk around the lake. So our building, if you can try to picture this, our building, if you're looking at the pond from the starting point, our building's on the right. And from the starting point, you'd walk around the lake. And as you're coming back to the start, you're going to see the second building right in front of you.
Okay.
And it'll be to the right of you if you're coming around. And then when you get back to the starting point and you're looking at the pond again, technically building number 2 is on your left. So we're walking around the pond on the first path, the first pass, and we're chatting, and we are BSing, and we look up as we're making the first loop around the lake. It's a clear night, stars are out, no clouds in the sky, and we're coming around the bend. And then as we're getting to the point where we're now facing both the buildings again, 1 and 2, because we've made it around the pond.
Right.
We're getting to the starting point. Building 2 is on our right now, kind of like in front of us or just to the right of us. You can see the stars. And so we're looking up, and we see in the sky a huge fiery, like a fireball, like a light. It's a bright light, and it looks like a flaming fireball. And it's like, 3-4 times the size of any of the stars. You could tell in its size and its shape, it's relatively close to the ground, but it's probably about maybe a quarter half mile away, but it's huge. You could see it out from the distance. And we look at it and we're like, oh, look, it's the aliens are here. And we're making a joke, and Haley's like, shh, don't say that, Dan, don't say that, or they'll hear us. And I'm like, I know, that's why I said it. So they'll hear us. And she's like, just don't talk about it. She nudges me, and we make a little joke about it, and we go back to our business. So we're making a pass. We look at the clock, and it's like, almost coming in on 7 p.m. now, and we know we got to get back, but we're like, oh, let's make the walk one more time, and we'll go double time. We'll go double speed. And so we're coming around again, and we're making small talk about work, and how miserable we are because it's a call center and it's collections. And so we're coming around, and we make it around the loop again. And now we're facing building number 2. It's in front of us, just beyond the trail. And we look up at the sky, and there's that fireball again. It's still there. And I look up and I was like, look, Haley, they're still watching us. And she goes, Dan, well, I'll tell you, I had a nickname. My initials at work, everybody had a 3-digit nickname. So my acronym, I guess, was DLJ, was my nickname at work, because that was like the code system they gave me. So they called me Dilge. Sounded out, Dilge. So she's like, shut up, Dilge, don't talk about it. And we start laughing, and we're both, I know that Haley and I are both just kind of like casually looking up at it as we walk. And I'm on the left, Haley's left, and she's on my right. And so just as I said that, I was like, look, Haley, the aliens are still watching. And she's like, shut up, Dilge. And we look up, and then all of a sudden, Sue, this is what happens. The building in front of us, the building number 2, not our building, we're in building number 1, but building number 2 is in front of you as you're making a turn to the path to get back to where it starts. All of a sudden, the building jerks, the whole building, it jerks from like its starting point. A is the starting point, and then B is its ending point. The whole building shifted really hard, like an inertia hit us heavy, like being in a car accident. I've been in many car accidents. That's the only thing I can compare it to, is when your vehicle is hit, there's an inertia where the physics jerk you so hard out of your starting point. So everything, like an inertia, hit us. And we were looking forward, and the building, it just shifts like this, a couple feet. Okay, now mind you, we were walking in motion when this happened. Okay, we're moving forward, and the building goes like this. And as it stops, it all happened very quickly, like a car accident. Get this, backing up. So Haley and I are now, we see this building jerk like this. Haley and I are both stopped. We're not walking anymore. We're standing still. And both of us are bent over like this, standing in place, not moving.
Wow.
With our heads over. So I'm leaning over like this. The pond is on my left, building's in front of me, which is jumped. And Haley's to my right. And I felt like I was rocked, like an inertia, like an impact. And everything went like black for a split second after the building moved. And just as I kind of like caught my bearings and I came to, I look over at Haley, and she's just standing there like this. Okay. And she gets her bearings and kind of like fixes her eyes, and she sits up and looks over at me and realizes that we're not walking anymore. And we were both just like this after having like been rocked by some sort of impact, some sort of movement, some sort of inertia. Now, when I say that the building shifted, I don't think the building moved at all. So when we came to, we looked at each other, and we're both freaked out because we both had an experience. And she goes, did you feel that? I said, yeah. Did you see that? Did you see the building move? And she goes, yeah, you saw the building jump. And I said, yes. So I was like, what happened? Why aren't we walking? And she's like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm freaked out. And so we look up and the fireball's gone. Okay. So if you're looking at the sky and you see the stars, like okay, here's a good example. Do you see the tapestry behind me? You've
Yeah.
got the little stars
Yeah.
and you've got the bullet points for the constellation. The fireball was like 5 times the size of those in comparison to the stars behind them.
So it was
it,
huge.
huge. It was huge. And it was so huge that we were freaked out by it the first time we made the loop and made a joke about it that it was an alien. So we came back right when we saw the fireball and we made that joke. We jerk, the whole world shifts, and we snap out of it and wake up and realize that like something was wrong. So like I said, I don't think the building moved. I think we moved. And I'm going to circle back to that in a minute.
All
So
right.
we're very like jarred. We're very like shooken. Both of us suddenly don't feel normal. So let's get back inside. So we run back. We're like fast power walking back into the building. We split off. She goes and sits down. I go to sit down, and I look at the clock, and it's 7:15, and we had gone on break at 6:45. And the walk takes just over. It takes
20 minutes.
Yeah. So we sit down, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what the hell? And my phone rings, and my intranet phone in the building, and it's Haley. So I answer it. She's like, Dilge. I'm like, yeah. And she goes, what happened? And I said, okay, well, let's talk about this. We made a joke about the weird fireball we saw in the sky. Neither of us really taking it too seriously, although I was always a believer ever since I grew up as a kid. And I know that, extraterrestrials exist, but she didn't. So I was making a joke with her the whole time about it. And to not make her uncomfortable. So I'm like, that was a UFO, Haley. And what did you see when you lost consciousness? She's like, we actually lost consciousness for a second. And I was like, yeah. She's like, okay, it looked like the building in front of us shifted a few feet from the right to the left. I said, I know, I saw that too. And then I was like, why the hell were we standing sideways? Like we were not, we imagine being in motion, and then you see the world shift, and then you lose consciousness for like a split second, like a frame dropped, and then you're just standing there like this with your eyes closed. Very bizarre. So I said, what the hell was that? She's like, I don't know, Dilge. Freaked out really bad. And I'm like, okay, what else? And she's like, I feel like I haven't slept in 2 days. And I'm like, me too. I had suddenly felt very tired, very fatigued, like I was underslept, like I'd been awake for 2 days. I felt like, drunk, like I had a drink or something. Either like I was buzzed on alcohol or I hadn't slept. I felt more underslept than drunk. And so her and I are talking on the phone, and I'm like, that was just extremely bizarre. And I don't have an explanation for it. But what do you think happened? And she's like, I don't want to say it.
Because that makes it not true.
Right. And so I'm like, okay, well, Haley, can you agree that that was like an alien craft, right? And she's like not responding. Because like I said, she's just not really like fully conscious to, or fully open to those things. And she's like, something happened. And I'm like, okay, if we feel underslept, we feel groggy and tired, and we saw the fireball in the sky. Now, mind you, I had seen those fireballs. It's a certain type of ship. I've seen those like tens of 20s of times in Washington State growing up as a teenager. That particular craft style used to hover over what I would call Mud Bay in Olympia, Washington. It was almost common. I could go out on my back porch and look over the Puget Sound, and there'd be regular stars in the sky, and maybe a satellite or a plane would go by, and there'd just be a giant fireball hovering.
Wow.
That was common for me in Washington State growing up. So I'd seen these before. And growing up in Washington State, which is like there was a lot of paranormal and esoteric activity, for me, it was just more common knowledge to accept the phenomenon that we were experiencing. Whereas for Haley, it was harder for her to admit because she just hadn't been exposed to this type of experience. So I says, we lost time. We lost time. We're tired. And we're confused. And I said, when that building jumped, I don't think the building moved at all. I don't think anything moved. I think we were removed from the earth for who knows how long, based on how tired I am, hours or a day or two, maybe. And then we were placed back.
Right.
So that was like a teleport out, teleport in. And it wasn't the world that moved, but it was us.
Wow.
And that's why we were leaned over like this. And maybe we had just been laying down. I don't know. And then it wasn't the world that moved, it was us. And so the inertia, the motion was us moving. I think that was an imperfection in the extraction, in the re-downloading process of our bodies, where there was an inertia there. So would they take you and then they put you back? It just wasn't a perfect splice in time. It wasn't a perfect splice in time and space. There was a small little glitch, a small little byproduct in the physics, that if they have technology to extract you and put you back, they can do what's called as time dilation. We learn about this by studying the secret space program, that they can literally like cut and rewind time.
Right.
So I think that there's technologies that really do that really exist, but it's probably not perfect down to like the nano
second
moment.
Right.
And in terms of like placement, location, and time, it's probably not an exact perfect science. So like, let's say somebody's extracted, or I don't want to use the word abducted, but you are taken in your sleep. You're not going to really notice any sort of transportation, teleportation. You're not going to notice any slippage in time. If your partner is in bed next to you, they're not really going to notice if you blip in and out of space, in quantumly fast. No one's going to notice. But if you're awake and conscious when you're taken, and then you're put back and they, time dilate back, it just wasn't a perfect cut and paste. So that's what I think the physics of it were, why we felt underslept, why we were standing strange, and why the building seemed to move. I think that Haley and I were taken. I think that she admits that, and she still recalls it to this day, how bizarre the phenomenon was. And so I truly believe that, that was an ET race that picked us up and put us back. And the only thing I can tell you as to why, what was the reason behind that, what was the agenda. Haley and I had been working together for about 2 years in the call center. We'd known each other. We'd always been on each other's teams. And the only thing I can tell you is that leading up until that point, we had dreams about each other a few times. I had 2 or 3 dreams about her. She had 2 or 3 dreams about me. And then that experience happened. So maybe some people who are listening are familiar with what's called as like the hybridization program. Yeah. Bashar talks a lot about that, or the hybrid races talk a lot about that, like the Yael, and they'll mention things like that. I don't know how much I agree with that whole like narrative, but I do think that it happens. I do think it's a real phenomenon that happens. And I oftentimes wonder if, Haley and I were involved in that program.
Right.
And that's why we had certain dreams about each other that led up to an extraction. And then we were brought back. And I think we were physically left, and I think that we lost some time. And so to this day, that's the best description that I have of that experience. And sharing it with Haley was very powerful and very special, because as someone who was not exactly a believer like her, that validates the experience even more that her and I went through together as friends. And we told people about it. We mentioned it to other people, and they all thought it was really weird and strange. But it's one of those things where it's like, you got to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
You got to be there for it to really have the impact that it had. When you feel yourself kind of like It's
Yeah.
very bizarre,
Yeah.
Sue. It's very powerful, strong experience. It really happened. Um, and I believe that that's just any number of a variety of different circumstances and accounts when someone can get taken by an ET race. I do not believe that it is always a malevolent, nefarious reason.
Right.
Um, I even did a film about this one time. I've actually done multiple movies that depict, an abduction because it's just something that I'm familiar with. And I think that, there are many what we call star family that could take us, whether in the dream state or in your physical body, for good reasons. Maybe it's some kind of like medical intervention. Maybe they're doing like downloads or altering your DNA or your code, or maybe they're fixing things or removing, negative implants. There could be a lot of positive spins you can put on an AT abduction. It doesn't always have to be scary like it is in the movies. It
Right.
doesn't have to be malevolent, nefarious, um, tests and who knows, cloning and whatever, all kinds of stuff that people like to say that are happening. All of it is yes, but you can choose whichever, timeline narrative you prefer, whatever the reason is. I think that you could do a lot of soul searching on your visitations, but I don't think that anything bad happened to Haley and I. I mean, uh, I think that it was a pretty magical experience. And although it was frightening, I think the only fear came from the unknown and not fully having any memory of what
Right.
happened. Like to
Right.
this day, even as a channeler, I've not been able to see into the missed time and what happened when we were gone and for how long. Those are things that have still never come to me in visions or dreams or downloads or anything in the channeling state. And I could probably investigate it further in the channeling state, maybe ask the races that I work with, can you elaborate on that experience? But for some reason, I left it alone because it was one of the only times that that's happened to me consciously awake. And I like to sort of, in sort of a bizarre way, I like the mystery. I like the wonder, I
Yeah.
and that's so that was the story that I wanted to share with you about my real
Wow. Wow.
abduction.
Wow. All right. I have like a billion questions.
Please do. Shoot,
I'm going
fire
to try
away.
to do them in a logical progression. So when you were younger, like when you were in Washington, you'd see the fireballs all the time. And I'm assuming your neighbors, your friends and all that would also see them.
Yes.
Your mother, like you
Yeah.
said,
My
you,
mom saw them regularly with me. Yeah.
yeah. So did anyone ever like speculate on them or have any experiences or anything like that?
Okay. So I find that there's two types of people, not to generalize or stereotype, but there's two types of people when they encounter a UFO. Specifically, you're saying an unidentified object, a spacecraft, which there are a variety of shapes and sizes and colors. There's two types of people that will react. Like they'll either be like, what the heck? Oh, what is that? That's awesome. They'll pointing at it and and they maybe get their phone out, or they'll be like, dude, do you see that? This is so cool. Oh, I wonder what is this? Is it aliens?
Right.
What could that be? This is, oh my God, I got to tell my mom about this or my friend. They're really excited and they're believers. They're open to it. And then you have the alternative mindset where they're like, what? It's, I don't know. It's just a bright light.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
weather balloon. It's a seagull. It's a plane. It's a satellite. It's not a big deal. Like, I don't know. It's nothing. They're kind of people who would really just pawn it off, brush it off the shoulder. And they don't want to investigate anything
Right.
supernatural or
Right.
paranormal or esoteric. They're very quick to dismiss it. So I find that like, I've out of like all of like the 100 UFOs I've seen with people over the last 30 years, I've never found anybody who was right in between.
Okay.
They're either totally
Excited
or
or
dismissive.
they want it to go away. They don't want to acknowledge it.
They cannot. There might be
Right.
like some really thick cognitive dissonance or
Yeah.
programming that
Yeah.
turns them away from what could that be? Could it be something supernatural, paranormal, or
Yeah.
esoteric? Could it be an
Yeah.
alien? What is that? And so I've been with both of the varieties where one person is a believer and the other person is uninterested and just wants it to end. They want it to go away. So I've had everything in between. And growing up in Washington State, because of the type of person that I am and the type of people that I surround myself, generally speaking, they were very interested and open
Right.
to it.
Right.
And then it's when you're in bigger groups, like maybe 3 people are there or 4 people are there and you see it, that's when you get more of like the non-believers.
Right. You think it was a similar craft to what you saw when you were younger then? All
Yes.
right.
So I want to circle back
Yeah.
on that. As I mentioned earlier, I said that it was a fireball.
Right.
Okay. I've seen spherical metallic crafts of different shapes and sizes. I've seen the very popular black triangular crafts that are different shapes and sizes, but always in a triangular shape. I've seen cigar shape craft. I've seen what are they? It's just the oval,
Right. Right. Traditional.
spherical or
Yeah.
saucer craft.
Yeah.
Those are the least common that I've seen. The least amount I've ever seen. I've seen UFO ships that were um, awkwardly shaped, misshapen, and didn't fly in like a smooth pattern, but rather they were like lobbing,
Hmm.
like a block or a square. I've seen like square shape craft, but the most common that I've ever seen is the fireball. So let
Interesting.
me tell you about the fireball.
Okay.
And this is why I only wanted to give you one story, because I can talk for like an hour on one thing.
Well, I
So,
like it.
so here are the physics behind the fireball ship. I learned the science, the physics behind it. Most commonly, real extraterrestrial ships that are not like U.S. military or government craft that look like aliens, but they're really like the government, because those exist too. People can
Right.
mistake unidentified craft for just like military craft for like
Right.
UFOs.
Right.
So if it's a real certified extraterrestrial, they're most commonly coming from a higher density frequency. Your
Right.
fourth, your fifth, maybe your sixth density. Like I have one girlfriend I've known for many years. It's a good friend of mine, and she used to photograph like plasma ships that were like Merkaba shaped,
Right.
just like floating in the sky, like energy geometrical shapes. But those are ships. So the fireball, let's go target specifically the fourth and the fifth density frequency. So we're third density beings. This is the third dimension and third density. When we get into lighter frequencies, there are physical races like us, but there is a mismatch in frequency when they are lighter density beings coming into the lower density. So what happens, there's a type of like a physiological reaction, because they're coming from, say, for example, the fourth or fifth density in a ship, a physical ship. As it comes into the third density, it uses a certain type of technology that isn't like a force field, but almost like an anchoring tool. So the physics of their technology that allows them to densify their ship to come into the third density frequency, like tuning a radio or a TV, analog radio or television. When
Right.
you're turning the
Right.
station, you're going from like station 100 to station 80. So there are a type of physics when you're densifying your ship. When they come into our density, the force field around their ship and the technology that allows them to anchor into the lower vibrational frequency of Earth, it creates, as a byproduct, it creates almost like a type of fire, like a type of friction, like a firework, like friction is a good word,
Okay.
okay, like a static electricity.
Right.
And so you're getting like our frequency and our density and our pressure and our atmosphere of Earth conflicting with the lighter frequency of theirs. And so the fire is a byproduct of a fifth density craft being inside a third density frequency.
Right. Okay.
Almost like, say, for example, just for analogy's sake, when you pour oil into water, you know how the oil sits on top?
Yeah.
It stays in its own form and it stays contained and it slips and slides around, but it's its own texture.
Right.
It's really hard to get the oil to mix with the water. That would be a good example. The oil is like a fifth density craft, and the water is the third density frequency where we exist. So there's just and then imagine there being like fire and friction around it because the frequencies mismatch. So the ship's not on fire, but there is a chemical reaction there
Okay.
of the frequency dissonance. That's the key word I want to use.
That's a good way to
Frequency
say it.
dissonance.
All right.
That's where the fire comes from. They're not actually on fire. It's not actually a fireball. There's a metallic sci-fi ship inside that fireball. You just can't see it beyond the friction of the density dissonance.
So then my question is, when you're walking around the lake the first time and you first see the fireball and you kind of make a joke of it, did you stand there and look at it for a while? Did you explain it to her? Like,
I did.
You kind of knew what it was, right?
I did. I was fully in acceptance and admittance the whole time,
Right.
because I'm coming from a long history of being a believer and studying aliens and studying sci-fi movies and always being open to that. And
Right.
now, in a previous episode with you, in a previous interview, I did talk about my spiritual awakening. This would have been like not even a full year later. So I had
Okay.
just gone through a spiritual awakening, but
Right.
even up until that point, I was still very open to these concepts, very
Right.
accepting of
Right.
life on other planets and that we're not alone. And I just feel like my friend Haley wasn't quite there yet in her threshold of believability.
Right.
So like I toned it back a lot for her. But
Yeah.
I was like kind of poking at her. I had nudged her on the arm. I was like, you know, aliens are real, right? You know, like they're watching us. And she was in acceptance of it because she was so uncomfortable. She'd like look up for a second and be like, shut up, Dilge. Shut up.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
she knew it was so foreign and so out of the norm, this
Right.
thing hovering, like it couldn't have been a mile. It couldn't have been a half mile up away from us. And that in the grand scheme, that's not far at all.
So, there was no fear on either one of your sides when you were doing the first lap of walk. You saw it, you kind of made a couple jokes, you talked about it, but there
I
wasn't
think-
any fear.
I was never afraid.
Okay.
I welcome these things. Like I would do like a, what is it called? CE5 contact.
Yeah.
I do like, I go out in the woods and look for Bigfoot. Like I'm not afraid.
I know.
You know what I mean? So like I'm open. I want this. I would say, come get me, you know, bring me, take me to the mothership. At any point in my life, I would be totally open to contact and to an experience. Haley, with the first pass, to answer your question, the first loop
Right.
around, when we both saw it, it was so definitively out of the normal and not a plane and not a weather balloon or a
Right,
seagull
of course.
that or a
Right.
satellite that you had your brain, your cognitive dissonance kicks in. You have to deny it a little bit because it was so obvious what it was. And
right.
that did scare her a little bit.
All right.
And she's like, shut up, Dilge, shut up. I know. I was like, you know, it's an alien, right? She's like, I know, shut up. Don't talk about it. You know, and then we went around the second time. And you know what was really cool? When we got around the second time, the walk takes long enough that we quit thinking about it. We weren't
Wow.
still thinking about the aliens. We were talking about some work drama, some gossip. You know, there's always somebody got fired yesterday, and you know, Billy and Susie got caught having sex in the broom closet, and
Oh my God.
you know, it's a call center drama. So by the time
Yeah.
we made the loop around again, we had totally forgot.
Oh my God.
And then it was like right when you looked up and you see it, oh, it's still there. I was like, look, Haley, they're still there. The aliens are still there. And she's like, she looked up for a second and she's like, shut up, Dilge. And then bam, we're just like,
Okay. All right.
boom.
So you feel kind of woozy, if you will, crappy, drained. You go
Tired.
back and you complete your work, and you've mulled it over through the years. So when you've gone into meditation or channeling or whatever, you haven't really picked at it deep enough to get the answer what really happened that day.
No,
Like-
I haven't.
So I guess here's my question. Let's just say you did. Would you see it from your perspective, or would you see it from a witness perspective, so that you would
Both.
see what's all right? That was my question, because maybe you were not conscious when it was happening.
Right. Now with channeling, there is a really complicated to explain mechanism that happens. I'll do my best to explain it. But it looks a little something like this. So let's say a channeler goes into the channeling state. He's talking to an extraterrestrial race like I do, or so many number of channelers do. You also have what's called as spirit guides. Everybody has a spirit council, spirit guides that are higher dimensional, higher density beings that oversee your life, your incarnation, your life path. And what I've noticed is whenever I'm in the channeling state, whatever contact I'm having is monitored by them. And it's oftentimes like in a protective way, because one of the key tasks or jobs of a spirit guide is to always make sure that your life path, your journey that you're on as Sue or Daniel, isn't negatively interfered with or
Right.
negatively
Right.
impact by knowing certain things you're not supposed to know yet, because that will have it can have a negative effect on your course, on your mission.
Right. Right.
When I say mission, that's very loose. You know, people may study the fact that, okay, well, there's what's called a soul contracts. You know, we all come in with a plan, certain things to experience, certain things to go through for the sake of, you know, the development and growth of our soul. And that is true to a degree, but it's more loose than that. There's a lot more variety, and things can change. You can rewrite your contracts in the middle of your life too. I just wanted to go off on that quick tangent. But long story short, spirit guides, your guides will protect you from knowing things you're not supposed to know yet. Now, if I'm a channeler and I can talk to aliens and I haven't investigated that particular experience all these years later and never been called to do that, I can only assume that if I were supposed to know, I would.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess that was the big question. Like, you know, how would you have seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I to this day, I wonder, and I'm curious, but I don't feel like I was in danger. I don't feel like it was malevolent. I don't feel like anything bad happened to me. I'm somebody who has had chronic illness pretty much my whole life. A variety of different things come and go. And I like to think that oftentimes maybe they help with that.
Right. Right. Well, just think of it like we don't know. So somebody picks us up out of the fishbowl and does something, then brings us back down. Well, we don't know if it's for good or bad, but it's scary. So we're mind wiped or whatever. We don't remember the experience.
The unknown is scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And movies, okay. Look at movies like okay, there's a new movie, guys. YouTube it, right? YouTube the trailer right now. It's called Nope. And it's by Jordan Peele, the director, the writer director. Jordan Peele did an alien movie, and it's called Nope. Like, you know how like you see something and it freaks you out and you're like, nope.
Yep.
Nope, not for me.
Yep, I do.
That's what the movie's called. But I want you
Okay.
guys to watch a trailer. And the reason why I say that is because it is a very fear-based,
Right.
heavily agenda-based sort of mind control propaganda
Right.
that is not the kind of entertainment we need in a constructive way, because what it does is it depicts abductions from a fear-based, scary, malevolent,
Right.
we are going to probe you, we are going to dissect you, we are going to take you apart. And that is why we're so afraid of aliens.
Exactly.
Because look at the way that
Hollywood, right?
Hollywood has demonized
Exactly.
aliens for 40, 50 years. It's no wonder why so many people don't want to believe, because the way that it's been depicted in movies and TV shows for so long, the horrible things that aliens do to us, you don't want to believe that stuff is real or that they're out there, because you can only assume, based on the way our mainstream media has programmed us into fear patterns, that if they were to come from the sky and land on Earth, they would laser us.
Well, you know, I'm totally agreeing with you. And I think that's one of my pet peeves with some of these movies, is because it's always fear-based, and it never depicts the alien race as benevolent at all. All right. So I know there's good guys and bad guys everywhere. So it just seems one-sided. I know, especially in the 80s and 90s, they were really talking about abductions. That's really when it started becoming a thing, right?
Right.
And I can remember there were shows on TV, and they would talk about how the aliens could walk through the walls, paralyze you, take you away. And, you know, I can remember being up at the summer house and actually like laying in bed awake all night because I was afraid, which is stupid. You know, like,
and that's from our TV and movies.
Yeah, totally. And then, you know, I see the craft, I see it go over. I felt no fear. Of course, now I don't have recollection of being taken away, but I'm in the same physical location, but I didn't feel fear at all. So it's
Oh,
very
that's good.
interesting. Yeah.
I think that some people may become, you've probably heard of like the terms indigo,
Yeah.
Blu-ray,
Yeah.
rainbow, you've heard of star seeds, earth
Crystalline,
seeds,
blah, blah,
crystalline.
blah. Yeah.
But what if, but what if they are a phenomenon and they come programmed with certain sort of defense mechanisms in their DNA that makes them
Right.
more resilient to mind control, into programming. So when you watch those movies, yeah, sure, I'm sure it has a negative effect on us to some degree, but you can also see through it a little bit more and see that it just wants to hurt you. It wants to scare
Yeah.
you, but that might
Yeah.
not be the truth. So
Yeah.
one thing I've always teached in my metaphysics training and on my podcasts and in my films, one theme that I always sort of repeat and explore over and over again is when it comes to aliens and life on other planets, they have been depicted in such a way that we will fear them if they land. And that think about this, Sue. I do believe we have hundreds of extraterrestrial races that interact with Earth for a variety of different reasons. And I think that many of them are walking the Earth with us right now. And I also think that many civilizations live inside the Earth and on it in hiding. So the reason why I'm telling you that is, if any alien race were truly malevolent and were going to hurt us, I don't think that it would be the ones that come from the sky and the stars. I think that they're the ones that are already here hiding amongst us.
Truth.
And they're the ones who
Right.
create the propaganda and the mind control material that humans, civilians are susceptible to, that will make us scared of the aliens that come from the stars
Right. Right.
while they're hiding amongst us now.
They're hiding in plain sight, really.
Yeah, totally.
And you know what we're talking about, of course, but
Totally.
yeah, I do agree with you. What I've noticed though is I've had several encounters with UFO or craft, and oftentimes I'm with a group of people and they see it. We might even say a couple sentences at the time. It's always minimal conversation. But then it seems like we never talk about it again. And I thought that was weird. So just like with this time, we're at the summer place where there were probably 10 people around that fire. And no one's ever had a conversation about it. Don't you find that odd?
I do. Now, why do you think that is?
I don't know, but it's happened more than once with me. And like I like one time, I might have already told this somewhere. I've I was down in Virginia Beach, and we were at a hotel on the beach, maybe the 8th or 10th floor up, and our sliding glass door was open at night. The curtains were just blowing in the breeze, and there was 4 of us in the room, in the suite, and we were dead asleep. And all of a sudden, a giant bright spotlight shines in our room from the ocean. Okay, so we're on the ocean. So we all jump out of bed and walk over toward the window. And we look and we can see a craft, leaving our area and going off over the ocean. Okay, so we all stood there for a while. We all went back to bed, never said a word again about it, which is bizarre. Now, I had the memory, but I'm like, well, so about maybe 6 months later, I said, hey, do you guys remember that, time? They were like, yeah. I'm like, why didn't we talk about it? But that's happened over and over and over again, where we'll see something and we don't even actually have a conversation.
I would assume that's because there is somebody, not to judge, no, I'm not judging. Yeah. There's somebody in the party, in the group, that is a non-believer, that is uncomfortable with accepting that as a reality because of deep-rooted fear programs that are, hidden in the subconscious. And they're not comfortable accepting that as a potential truth for them. So they just won't talk about it. You won't address it. It's not something that comes up at the dinner table because they don't want to face the fact that could be real.
Yeah.
That's why I think they don't want to talk. If you and me, I wouldn't shut up about it. You and me would talk about it until it was bedtime.
Yeah. I tell everybody pretty much. about maybe 4 years ago, I asked my mom and dad, hey, do you guys remember anything unusual happening when I was a kid? And they both got really quiet and they sat there. And of course, I was with them many times. We saw all sorts of stuff. But my mother said one time I was pulling in and there was a UFO over the neighbor's house hovering. And I was like, whoa, you never told me that. So they've had these experiences, but nobody talks about it, and but like they didn't mention that time the giant craft went over our heads. I just find that so interesting.
And what do you think would happen if you brought it up again today, now?
Well, my brother, I was driving somewhere with my brother a few months ago, and he says, I bet we've seen UFOs. And I sat there and I'm like, dude, I've sat right next to you when we saw UFOs. Are you crazy? And he looked at me like, what? So it's odd that they don't remember. And I do. Don't you think?
It's very strange.
Yeah.
And that could
Yeah.
be part of the frequency dissonance,
Yeah.
part of the cognitive dissonance. Some
Yeah.
people just aren't there
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
They don't want
Well,
that.
like I said, my family was wild for science fiction when I was growing up, and fantasy, but mostly science fiction. So my brother and I we still watch Star Trek, Star Wars. We watch all, we watch all that stuff. I think he believes, but I just don't think he remembers, which I find odd. I just find it odd.
Did you ever hear Bashar say many people have ET contact, but the rate in which you remember the contact is how they determine how ready you are for like an open sort of conscious contact.
Yeah.
Have you heard that? So if people don't have contacts,
Yeah.
or if people
Yeah.
do have contact, but they don't remember them, that's a measurement tool with how ready they are for like a recollection, a
Right.
real face-to-face.
It kind of makes sense. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. I don't care what it is. If something comes at you in the dark or whatever, it's going to be scary because you can't see it. But let's say the doorbell rang and there was a being there that was a giant whatever, lobster, bird, whatever. It would still be scary, but in the daylight, it's a little less scary.
Correct.
Right? At night, it would freak you out. Right? If it jumps out of the bushes, you're going to be freaked out. But if it approached you in a soft way, it would be more palatable for us to understand, right?
Correct.
So that's the way I'd like to have my contact, kind of gentle and soft. Just putting that out there.
I love that. Yeah. And I can also say that, okay, let's say people are open and comfortable and ready to have like an ET contact, like a real face-to-face with an alien.
Yeah.
A peaceful one, a loving one that it comes in peace.
Yeah.
I think contact would happen gingerly, baby steps in ways, just like you said, that would be less threatening. Like you never just want one to pop into your living room.
I don't want anyone to pop in.
You don't want that. You don't want them to show up unexpected, unannounced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's how I think it would be most appropriate for the human brain. Also with our programming that is really like everybody has programming, even if it's subconscious.
Totally.
You don't know how unready you are until it happens. So in a more linear way, I think that having some sort of internet-based contact where maybe they're communicating to you on the internet, and that would be hard for you to believe at first, because how would you know that it's not like a hoax or one of the three-letter agencies tricking you, or somebody behind a computer that's leading you on? But that would still be more palatable than him showing up in your living room while you're having a TV dinner in front of the news.
Yeah. Because I don't care who it is, even if it's somebody you like, having them pop out of the dark or pop in on you is scary. It startles you. And then when you see their appearance, that would be another layer of fear.
Ginger, gradual, right? So let's say you're having an internet conversation through chat. You don't believe that they're aliens at first, but that's a type of contact, which is actually happening right now in a lot of different ways. And then, so you start to build some trust. Next thing they do is they show you a picture of themselves, or maybe a little audio clip, maybe they learn some basic English and they record an audio bite of them speaking English. They send you the audio file, and then maybe they show you a picture of what they look like. That might be a lot. That might still be really heavy, but they're still not in your house, in your face, or landing, in
Right.
front of you out
Right.
in the woods.
Yeah.
That could be a more gradual ginger process. Then when
Yeah.
you're comfortable with the way they look from the safety of your computer screen,
Yeah.
and you hear the audio of their voice, you know that they're not harmful or threatening in their cadence and demeanor and their appearance. They just look different.
Yeah.
Then you could begin to maybe explore like a video call like you and me are doing right now. Maybe they'll like, okay, let's do a Skype, let's do a Zoom, and you communicate with an alien on the computer, and then you have that interaction. And maybe you still don't fully believe what you're seeing, but that's the closest anyone's ever gotten to
Right.
ET contact while they're awake and they're not dreaming of it. Then after some time and some trust is built, then maybe it'd be appropriate to try to pick a time and a date in a private location that's secret, where you meet in the woods, in the middle of a state park on a day that no one's going to be there. And you could try that and see if you're physically, mentally, emotionally prepared for it. But I think that it would have to start slow
Yeah.
and gradual, like something like that.
Yeah. Agreed. So no pop-ins.
Don't show up in my house.
Well, I just had a story that just left my mind. So your experience was very interesting.
Thank
And yeah, and you're still in touch with Haley.
We're friends on Facebook,
Yeah.
I could write her and say hi. I'm still friends with her husband, but we
Yeah.
don't talk on a regular basis. Like
Yeah.
we've mentioned this experience once or twice in the past. It's been
Right.
many years now.
Right.
And we all kind of joke about it, but I'm proud to say that Haley has, come into a little bit more of an acceptance
Right.
of what it really was. And she talks
Okay.
about it now after the fact, many years later, that it was one of the most strange and interesting paranormal experiences she's ever had.
Right. Right. Well, like you, I've seen a lot of craft, just in my travels, and I won't say I have had the experience that you do, but I guess it would be in the past year or two. I've taken in the broad daylight, I've seen things in the sky that weren't planes. One time I was swimming, and this ball of energy basically was hovering in the sky. The clouds were blowing to the left. The planes were flying around. This energy ball, if you will, was sitting there for a while. And I was in the pool talking. I pointed it out to everybody. I watched it for a good hour. And I finally got out of the pool, I didn't want to get out. I was watching it and took a picture. And of course, it's a blue sky with a dot of white. And so when you expand it, it looks like swirling energy.
Yeah.
All right. And then one time there's a big park about a mile or two from here. I was out in the middle of the day with a friend. She was walking her dog. There were first 2, then 5, then 1, then 3. Like the little dots kept going in and out and moving. So, it's a big blue sky. So I take my phone out finally, like I'm not always quick on taking the phone out. I get caught in the moment. So I took my phone out, took the picture. I only caught one. But if you expand it, it's the same sort of a swirling ball of energy. Yeah. And then about 2 months ago, a friend of mine, she lives maybe a mile away, texted and said, there's a giant ship over the airport right now. So I go out. Now it gets very dark here. There's no street lights. It's dark. And it's a big deal to walk out to my car at night, no lie. So I walk down to the end of my driveway to the street, and I can see it clear with my eyes. And it's moving around, changing colors and all that. So I did take video of it. And, I have the video. It's not great quality. And it's moving, but you can see the energy of it moving. So I've seen things daylight, nighttime, all over. Like some that look like shooting stars, some that are cloaked or whatever, and they just blot out the stars behind them. A lot of these little energy balls, if you will,
Yeah,
that sometimes they look like they have laser colors,
yeah,
red, yellow, green, blue,
totally.
whatever. And the colors are moving. It almost seems like it's a pattern. And I've seen them all over the world. Like in everywhere I go, I've seen those. So like I can walk out tonight if it's not cloudy, and I could probably point out 20 of them in 2 seconds.
Totally. A
Yeah,
friend of mine, I mentioned earlier in the conversation, she used to film them on her camera.
yeah,
Those
yeah,
plasma energy balls that look like they're kind
yeah,
of like swirling and rotating.
yeah,
Yeah, those
yeah,
are a thing.
yeah. So it's very interesting. And well, I have lots more stories, but I think we should say that for another time. And I appreciate your time. That was so interesting. And if you ever like get any more info on that, you don't have to dig for it, but just let me know. One of the stories I want to tell next time is about how I had a vision that scared me and I had to keep coming back to it to get the story. Should I just
Mhm.
tell it now or should I wait?
Sure, go for it. Shoot.
All right. All right. Since I brought it up. So it was about 4 years ago. So let's just say 2018. Okay, let's pick a date. I was doing a meditation and it was, I forget what the topic of that meditation was. The thing that is blocking you from moving forward most, or something like that. That was the theme. So I go into meditation and I'm zooming in, and there's like these metal bars and I'm zooming in. It's like I'm flying and I see these metal bars and I'm like, oh, my fear is so intense. I sucked right back out. Like the picture of those bars scared me so much. I can't even tell you. I'm like, what the heck? I want to know what it is. So it took me a few minutes. I calmed myself. I went back in. I saw the metal bars again. I still felt the fear. I zoomed out just a little bit. So it was a bed, like a twin bed with a like metal, like a metal headboard. All right. And I looked around the room. It was just a little square room, a window, a table under the window, very sparse and very bare. But my fear was so intense, I can't even tell you. So I got out again. I popped myself back out. So I wait a little bit longer. I go back into meditation. I'm like, okay, I'm chipping away at this because this is the thing that's blocking me. So the next vision I see, it's like something out of the movies. It was, and it's like an estate in old England. It is such a big, like mansion building. All right. It's got grass, beautiful mature trees, this giant brick building, but it is deathly quiet. And my fear is intense. All right. So then I go back in again because I keep popping out every time I get scared. Okay. So we're almost to the end. So I go back in again. And this time I'm going to say London. All right. Like, I think it was like the 1700s or the 1800s. I'm seeing these guys with like the velvet top hats and the coats, like the coats with the tails, the canes, the sideburn mutton chops or whatever you call them. Like, so to me, it's 1700 or 1800. And all these guys are lined up around the corner of this giant building. And my fear is intense. So I keep popping out again. So I pop back in. And what happened is I was a spiritualist. So I don't know what, century this was, 1700s, 1800s. So I was on the stage and all these people had come to see me. And I didn't want to be there. I was forced to, I don't know, do a show or whatever you want to call it. All right. I didn't want to do it. I was forced because I had psychic abilities. And either I said something that they didn't like, or, in those days, your husband could ditch you if he found somebody else, he could put you in an asylum. But I ended up in an asylum. Okay. That's what that giant building was. And the reason I had fear is, torture. And I believe there was a baby involved. I mean, this took like a couple weeks to really get the story. So I'm not sure if I had a baby or if there was a baby they were threatening to torture or hurt, but they kept controlling me by using this baby to make me comply with what they wanted. So I was kind of a captive. That was a long story, but that's one where I've popped out of the meditation and I've been able to successfully get back in to get more information, you know. And I did it within probably a week. I got the whole story there, or enough of it to understand what it was trying to show me, you know. Um, Creepy story though.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've
Mm.
I've heard similar stuff, not to end on a dark,
Yeah,
super dark note, but I know that there are, like, even times on planet Earth, when that a lot of women were in that very same specific position, and it was
yeah,
generally by malevolent,
yeah,
extraterrestrial races could put human women in those positions, oftentimes for certain types of slavery and stuff. I wonder if that could possibly be an example of that. I
yeah,
don't know. I mean, if we had more time to investigate into that, I do know a lot of circumstances when, prior to our civilization as it is right now, but even going back like further
yeah,
than our own history, there are still humans that existed on Earth under different civilization time periods, and we're talking like certain types of slavery where women
right,
were
right,
uh, used in, specifically for those reasons,
right,
and then their children were used as a leveraging tool.
right. Yeah,
So
I'm not sure specifically what happened, but all I know is I felt intense fear.
yeah,
And like I said, this place was quiet as a pin. I mean, on the outside, it would look spectacular, like something out of one of those movies or whatever, but it was not a happy place. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but I guess my point in telling that story is how I kept coming back at it to chip away to get the information. And that's why I wrote that story down. I wanted to tell it because we had talked last video about like going back in to get further information. I had told a story about myself being on that swamp planet.
right.
And you asked some questions, and I'm like, I don't remember. Well, it's been a few years. I don't know if I can go back in and get more detail, but I feel like every time I get one of these really intense visions or a very lucid dream, it gives me great information. And it's just deciphering what the message is. So
Yeah, that's
there you
awesome.
go.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that with me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know somebody out there is going to resonate with, some
Yeah.
familiar repressed incarnational
Yeah.
memories that have,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Interesting, huh?
yeah.
Well, I have lots of stories. Well, I think we should tune off for today. And I want to say thank you so much for your time. It was so interesting to hear your story.
Well, thank you for having me, Sue. I genuinely appreciate the opportunity to
Excellent.
speak about these
Yeah.
things and
Yeah.
share these stories that are important to me. And I hope that in some way, shape, or form, they help people, and also,
Yeah.
help people unlock their own memories as well. And I
Right.
can say that's already happening. I will say, actually, since
Yeah.
this is our fourth interview together, I've gotten some messages and people have reached out, having
Right.
listened to it, and said, "Oh, I can't believe you've gone through that and that you know what you know, because
Yeah.
here I have this memory of
Yeah.
this incarnation, or I have this vision about this lifetime and on this planet." And so those conversations are happening. And I
Yeah.
hope, I think that's what you want to be a
Exactly.
result of this show.
Exactly. If this helps people, if it opens their mind, if it makes them feel more comfortable, if it's entertaining, whatever, that will make me feel like it's worth the effort. I'm really having a ball doing them. But it's really, I remember the stories. It's really for other people to say, oh, I had something like that happen too. Maybe that was real. And the comments I'm getting are so positive. It's very exciting. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sue.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.